Hello, good afternoon. As my post description today says, this is a super important, incredibly important, crucial conversation that we need to have. And it is about suicide and mental health and how we can talk about these things. There's no other way to say it. Yesterday I was scrolling through my Facebook feed, keeping up with what friends and family and communities are doing, and came across a post about an individual sharing their family's story and impact that suicide has had, that mental health issues have had on them. And then I talked with two different parishioners later that morning who have had loved ones or people they have known very recently die from suicide. This is not one of those tragic but rare occurrences. It's something that impacts all of us, sometimes in large ways and sometimes in smaller ways, but we are all impacted. And there is so much myth and misunderstanding about the S word. We don't want to say it. We don't want to talk about it. We want to pretend that it's not there and it's not happening and that it's not going to touch our lives. But it is there in vastly more ways than most of us can imagine. It's been now 5 years since I went to this training for faith leaders called Soul Shop. I can't believe it's been 5 years and I haven't done more with the incredible resources and information I gained. But I thought it was beyond time for me to make a video like this and help as a clergy person to say, we in our churches, in our faith lives, can't be afraid to talk, to have these conversations. There are what those in the suicide prevention community would call faces of desperation. And there are 4 faces of desperation. There are those who are thinking about suicide right now. There are survivors of suicide, and that may be different than what you would imagine, but survivors of suicide are people who have been impacted by the death of someone that they know or love or are in some way connected to, death by suicide. And then the third group is people who are worried about someone who is thinking about suicide. And the fourth is those who have been suicidal in the past and perhaps haven't yet found a way to tell their story. There is so much shame, especially in faith communities, around this, because there is this misguided notion that suicide is a sin and is something that we cannot come near and we can't touch. A lot of that is because the first scriptural reference that comes to mind dealing with these faces of desperation is Judas. And since Judas was a betrayer and shamefully betrayed Jesus, and he died by suicide, well then suicide is shameful. Mental health, desperation, feelings of loss and being alone, those are not things to be ashamed of, but things and reasons to talk about and to reach out. The main reason that an individual dies by suicide is feeling hopeless and alone. And if a faith community cannot do something about an individual who feels hopeless and alone, then who can? If we as people who follow a God of love, a God of life, can't extend that love and life to those most desperate, then we are failing one another. We're going to have more conversations about this. I promise you that. There are so many passages and characters in Scripture who are these faces of desperation, and they look nothing like Judas. And we don't realize, when we hear these popular stories like the hemorrhaging woman or the father who brings his son to Jesus because his son has a demon and has been casting himself into the fire, we don't read those things and think, that is a face of desperation. That is someone impacted by suicidal thought. We cast it off and ignore that S word. No more. No more. We have to change how we as people, as society, think about mental health, about our soul's health, and be there for one another. So I'm going to stop talking to you now for today, but please, I added in the Facebook options for live videos the ability to send direct messages. Talk to me if you want to. Ask questions. Reach out. If you are one of those faces of desperation, I am one of those faces of desperation. I have been impacted by someone who has died from suicide. Let's talk. I'm here. I'm open, always. Send a message, reach out. All Saints is here. I am here. You are not alone. Your loved one is not alone. Just remember that.